Welcome to Data Liquidity 2021. Keeping this background in mind, we're getting into this discussion on data liquidity and how it's going to make a difference to the financial sector, how data liquidity can create wealth, and how also that wealth should be protected. And for that reason, we have a cross section of CISOs from the BFSI sector to talk and explore this topic. So welcome all my fellow participants to this discussion. I look forward to an engaging discussion with all of you. We'll briefly introduce ourselves. My name is Manoj Agrawal. I'm the founder and group editor of Banking Frontiers magazine, and I've been enjoying the job since the day we started this. Next, can I request Mr. Deepu to introduce himself briefly?
Thanks, Manoj and Babu. Looking forward to this discussion and a very happy new year to everyone. I handle operations and customer service at Bajaj Allianz General Insurance Company.
Thank you, Deepu. Mr. Deshpande, please.
Yeah, good afternoon and happy new year to everyone. Myself, Prashant Deshpande. I'm working at Shriram Transport Finance as a CISO and CDO. And my job is to, bring the digital transformation across the group company.
Wonderful. Thank you, Prashant. Khurshid, your brief introduction, please.
Very good afternoon, everybody. I am Khurshid Muzaffar. I have been in J&K Bank for last 28 years, handled as a CISO for the last 7 years, and I head the technology part of J&K Bank. This time I'm working as the Assistant Vice President of J&K Bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Khurshid. Good to meet you, and we look forward to your observations. Mr. Reddy, may we have your introduction?
Yeah, very good afternoon. Thank you and wish you happy new year. Myself KM Reddy. I am CISO of Union Bank of India and I am heading the information security here.
Navneethan, your introduction, please.
Thanks, Manoj. Very good afternoon to everyone. I'm Navneethan. I have close to 18 plus of experience in BFS sectors, I can see. I'm working as a CISO and head of IT at Grow, this company called Grow. And it's purely into the investment platform from end to end. Thanks, Manoj. Looking forward to
it. Tarun, can we have your introduction?
Thanks, Manoj. Good afternoon and a very happy new year to everyone. My name is Tarun Chatterjee and I am a director of solution engineering at Oracle. Which essentially means I work with customers across BFSI sector and look at some of the digital transformation and initiatives around data and data management.
Thank you, Tarun. Welcome. So one reason for having a technology company in this, and particularly Oracle, is we're talking of data. We have a company that deals with humongous amounts of data at each and every organization. So Tarun, we hope that you can value add to the discussion in a very meaningful way. So let's then jump into the discussion. So let's start with something very simple. Can I request a couple of you to share some examples of improvements in data liquidity that you have seen, that you have observed in your organization in the recent past, let's say 1 or 2 years, where data has really started moving around within the organization from outside to within, from within to outside with minimal barriers.
Yeah, Manoj. So maybe I can take the privilege, to take it forward, actually.
Please, go ahead.
That's amazing. So first of all, I like the topic. We would have heard about the liquidity in only the financial terms, right? It's not on the data side. Just I think you have given different perception on the data liquidity. Of course, it has a lot of value additions on the liquidity. I'm coming, in terms of what's happening, and even though during pandemic situations, of course, the BFS sector is one. It's going in the different directions in terms of the new business or in terms of the more startups. In fact, the NASSCOM surveys it shows across all during pandemic situation, the fintech sector is the one have a more number of new organizations with new features and all the things. So if you see this, the data facts, it's absolutely on the the customized data, what it is floating on, and how we can add values. If you'd have noticed the recent WhatsApp stuff, WhatsApp to the Facebook, the previous policy, absolutely on the the data standpoint. It's like, what are the data? So I have it. Again, I can bring into two ways. One is the data in the sense like not what are the chat, what we are doing. It's on the data, like what you have registered. It's maybe the email and then your mobile number, not on your communications chat as in the previous information. So that will be a little bit, the different standpoint. So here the data is, absolutely, it's coming as a liquidity, and that's a way. If you take the WhatsApp business association with maybe Geo or maybe on the different country, I don't want to name it, but on the different country where they have associations purely on the data, game. What are the users? Because it can be quickly converted as a business. Because now, what is the volume of user base you have? That's called the business. If you see this investment facts also, it's maybe what are the the top 10 investors in India. If you see, their first foremost focus is the business is second. The first foremost is like what's the level of data you have it, whether it is a CXO level or it's upper middle class or maybe lower class, how we can initiate the process. So that's a way, the data is one driving this entire business. The data is one driving this entire I can say this all the startups as well as the business movement. Because earlier, if you see the enterprises are one just hold all the stuff. Now it's all the startups have this information. So now the people are connecting how we can connect the enterprise to these startups to pull this the specific informations are utilized for the specific the applications. So that's why it's play a very significant role on the data side across all the platform. And of course, in the subsequent discussion, we'll discuss how we can protect, how we can add value, how we can have a data governance. Because most of the organizations, maybe if you touch upon the startups, so they focus on the functionality and then features. But data governance is really, it's missing. What information is really it's required for us, where we have got it, or maybe we have got the information more than what it is required for us.
Great. Thank you, Navneet, for the opening remarks. Can I request one more person to make an opening remark and then we'll go on to the next question?
Yeah, Prashant.
Yes,
yeah. So, as Shriram Transport Finance is in a commercial vehicle finance business, we were there since last 45 years in this field. But last few years we saw a lot of data flow, specifically when we have developed the entire ecosystem. So earlier we just used to have a driver's data, limited data of your geographic data and his age and his personal data. But now we have developed an ecosystem where we are, we're doing a kind of working capital loan for his toll financing, fuel financing. Then we are providing the logistics to him. So now we started getting data about this driver, wherever he's moving, wherever he's going for a tire or for fuel, where he is moving on the logistic front, which are the areas he's going. So the amount of data we are having now, and now these ecosystem partners, they are coming to us and they would like to, get engaged with us for a new business where we are also starting getting a new customer from there. So earlier we used to just have only a customer data, but now if you see, last few years we are having the entire customer movement data, entire customer behavior, how much fuel is refueling, how much kilometers is running monthly. So we have developed the entire ecosystem where I'll say for a lending business specifically, we know where our customer is and what he is doing. Okay, we are empowering him to pay us back. Okay, and at the same time we are also helping other ecosystem providers like fuel partners or tire partners or even a small mechanics on the garages on the road who are becoming our ecosystem partner to grow the business. So the data is coming from all the side now.
Just like Khurshid was saying, they have an extra snow this year. I think Shriram Transport has a lot of extra data this year.
Yeah, in short,
and it will keep growing, I'm sure. Khurshid, would you like to add for your bank and your ecosystem what the data story is?
As we have seen this data story growing, I would say that what has happened, communication technology brought the first shot in arm and increased the velocity of business. Velocity of businesses has increased because of the communication technology. That was what we saw in 90s. Now, it's a beautiful topic what you have picked. Data liquidity is going to be the second shot in arm, and it's going to exponentially further increase. Already it's increased by the communication technology, and by data liquidity technologies or management, it will be increasing. The velocity of business will be further increasing. We'll be able to do lots of things very quickly. And it will have a profound impact on our social setups, all the sectors.
Okay.
That's the comment I want to make.
Very interesting, very interesting. May I request Deepu to give a picture how data liquidity is making a difference to the organization and to the customers?
Yeah. So Manoj, I think, my fellow panelists, have covered it in great detail. So I'll basically not touch upon that dimension, but essentially, maybe coming, from a, slightly, different perspective. So one is, see, if you look at, data liquidity, essentially what does it do, right? It gives you the ability to have data entered once, and then, you can use it downstream, where other users can chip in. So from that perspective, if you look at our context, we have basically seen that across the value chain, when it comes to a holistic view of the customer, we are able to give meaningful context. And then the other is today, especially when there's a digital way of working, the entire game is around data. So therefore, I think our overall management of data, the entire program approach that we are able to give to it has become that much more reliable and flexible.
Thank you, Deepu, for that overview about starting with the end and flow everywhere else. Let me come to Mr. Reddy. Yours is, I guess, the largest organization among all these here, among all the participants here. And one of the things that the pandemic made a difference is push people into working from home and working from anywhere, which again made a lot of difference because the whole infrastructure and the mindset was not set up for data liquidity to enable that. How did Union Bank take up the data liquidity challenge in light of the pandemic, and what was achieved? And if there are any lessons from that, if you can share.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. I think most of BFSI have met this challenge. And I would like to say that now data is everywhere. Data is anything and data is everything now. So, and this data liquidity become the, it become the, the heart, the center for the privacy and security. We have to manage both privacy and security because the data has now exposed from the internal in a controlled environment to the, it has gone beyond beyond. I mean, it is a boundaryless. What I mean to say that it become boundaryless now. So to control the boundaryless data, now we have to lot of technologies, lot of processes, and also we have to balance in between the business requirements and also the data requirement because we cannot stop using the data. And data is what you said earlier. Now it has generated humongous. Means I think the way we were doing pre-COVID time and the post-COVID has gone more digitization. And almost our the transaction level which was earlier, it was falling in between 70-75%. Now almost all our brick and mortar and kind of operations which have even if from the opening of the account and the KYC, everything gone into the digital mode now. So it has now means the data it has spread it in such a way. It means it become too liquid, and the amount of liquid it is, and it is very difficult to an organization as a the CISO, and it's a quite challenge to the various risks which are coming out because the data has not been classified the way it has to be classified. It has to be prioritized. Which data has to go out? Which data should be inside? And inside, what kind of data is to be to make more useful kind of data is to. So all these things, it become more complex situation now. I think this is very apt subject, this data liquidity, and including that, I would also add some more new normals are going like data digitization, data business, now digital data, and we are also talking about data localization and data sovereignty. These are all kind of a new normal right now. I think most of people are now talking that the data has got a different form. I think it has got a value now. It is a like the currency. We have some value, and similarly, the data has got that kind of value. If we can categorize, or you can recognize that value, definitely I mean, as a CISO, you can easily have that data liquidity visibility where exactly your data is flowing. So that is what from my side. So thank you very much.
Thanks for the overview, and also thanks for giving us new ideas like data sovereignty and data governance for future discussions. Let me come to Tarun now. Tarun, you have heard people, all our panelists talk about volume of data, velocity of data. How does your company see these trends, and how are solutions evolving to enable companies to monetize all this, to manage all this and to monetize all this, both ways?
Right, Manoj. And very apt question, especially with pandemic, we are seeing a lot of financial institutions move and fast track their digital transformation journey. So what it essentially means is, as Mr. Reddy mentioned, right? So the data volumes have moved from a brick and mortar in the counter transactions to more of an online transactions, where we are seeing customers and institutions moving to say, I will have my KYC, my customer 720, 360-degree, all the platform being built which are digital native. Okay, so we are seeing, in orders of magnitude where data has grown. Now, when the data grows at Oracle, of course, from a database company to an information company to a cloud company, we have tools and technologies to manage the data and the data growth. But I think the most important part I want to highlight are a few cases that we have been seeing and hearing, right? So first is the amount of collaboration has increased. So a bank or a financial institution is no longer a bank and financial institution. We will attribute them, or we will classify them as technology companies now. The digital transformation has made them digital native, cloud native, and therefore a transforming information technology company. Okay. And to safeguard interests of their underlying customers, managing data growth is important, but I think business resiliency and data protection are the next two gamut that we are seeing as a trend increasing. There's an increasing trend of business resiliency being thought through and data protection being thought through. The protection includes security, include backups, include recovery, and so on and so on.
Thank you, Tarun, for that overall perspective. You introduced this topic of cloud, which I think we're seeing in the last few months. It's becoming really important. So can we have some perspectives from our participants as to, in terms of cloud, both hybrid cloud, public cloud, any other form of cloud? What are you looking at? How does it enable your data liquidity? Is it easy to adopt, or are there challenges? Is it just copy paste from in-premise to there and start getting some better liquidity, or do you have to do some extra work?
You see, one is obviously the cloud helps you, bring it all together. Otherwise, data typically exists in siloed data marts in organizations, right? When you basically go to the cloud, you can put it all together and get a data lake, and then that helps you get a holistic view, right? Otherwise, earlier, if let's say you buy motor insurance, you go to one part of the organization. You buy health insurance, you go to another part of the organization, right? Here you can take a customer-centric view. And the other aspect is, of course, you need to constantly, whether it is on-prem or whether it is, on the cloud, you need to worry about data security, especially now because, everybody is, increasingly, using a lot of data. So whether it is, encryption of data in motion, or, whether it is about managing safety of data at rest, right? I think from a cybersecurity perspective, there is enhanced control to be brought in. And from an overall management of data, like you said, liquidity, right? Water will flow, right? And you can put it all together to get a holistic view.
If I may ask Mr. Reddy, When we come to cloud, there are two kinds of data. One is your structured data, which is in tables and columns, and then there is a lot of unstructured data, which could be voice, video, emails, documents, whatever else. Do you see different approaches to cloud when we try to use structured versus unstructured data? Which one is easier to move to the cloud, or which one is more beneficial to move to the cloud? What is the thinking about this for your bank and for public sector banks?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a big debate on this data structure. Basically, the structured data which resides in the data center, so it's we feel that it's well protected. I mean, we have a encryption, we have randomization, anonymization, whatever you say on the data governance part. So there is a process, to store the data in a very secure manner. However, this unstructured data is highly risky today, because since it become a boundaryless, and people can go from, they can create any amount of data. It may be a, their kind of as a business organization, financial organization, we always deal with the customer data. So there is that customer data. Again, it is a structured and non-structured. Some are the personal identifiable the sensitive data. Some are non-personal identifiable data. So we need to have the balance between that. If your personal identifiable data is highly critical and sensible, so we cannot expose to the cloud, and because in the cloud, of course, there is always when I'm talking about the cloud, means it's a public cloud. It may be XYZ, which is beyond our control. So that kind of data we have to clearly segregate, that which data you can put it on in private cloud or in public cloud or on premise cloud. So basically, as a financial organization, we are the custodian of the customer data. So our more focus is that if it is a highly sensible and highly critical, those data can be operated on premise cloud. It should not be exposed at all. However, some of the data like email or some non-sensitive data, which is that we can have a public. So what I mean to say that overall we can go for a hybrid, because both have their own merits and demerits. But looking at this data liquidity, so again, people have to work the way, because everybody work on data only today. See, and everywhere it generates data. See, if you look at today, earlier, the data means it's only business data. Now no more the business data. Now it has gone application data, it has gone system data, it has gone machine data. So everywhere it is generating data, and every data is important in terms of to maintain your privacy or security.
Let me ask Tarun now to respond to Mr. Reddy, because Union Bank, being a public sector bank, being a legacy bank, can take that kind of decisions. But there are neo banks, there are fintechs that are purely on cloud. I mean, they born on the cloud, they never had on premise.
Yes.
How would Oracle recommend them to deal with the nuances that Mr. Reddy has mentioned?
Yeah, I think from a data sovereignty standpoint, I think it follows the same principle that Mr. Reddy mentioned. Right? But at Oracle, what we also have is a construct, we call it cloud at customer. Right? So if I need to get the cloud construct inside the customer's premises, we have an offering for that. So we call it cloud at customer. Okay. So which is not a public cloud, but we bring the construct of public cloud inside the customer data center behind the firewall. So the data sovereignty questions around vaulting sensitive information, sensitive data, PII information, all that can be achieved. Yet you get the flexibility of the cloud constructs around elasticity, around usage, around someone managing the infrastructure for you, and so on and so forth.
And how does it work for structured versus unstructured data?
Right, and that's an amazing point, right? Because more and more as we work with in the financial sector, we see a lot of over the last 3 months we have met up with customers where they have faced some sort of ransomware attack, and we like it or not, the entry point to this was system data, right? Where routers and switch information were readily available for people to harness and get into the network. While we all focus on customer data, while we focus on transactional data, the system information, as Mr. Reddy mentioned, is very critical to protect as well. Okay. Now, coming back to the construct of how what we call as a neo bank or digital bank or digibank and all of these born in the cloud companies do is essentially they still classify information. Some of this information can go to public cloud. For example, they want to build sandbox environment for their people to work around AI, ML, and stuff around that. And bulk of this data are unstructured data, and they bring these bulk of unstructured data which are massaged, which are tokenized, and they move it to public cloud where they create these sandboxes. In an eventual deployment model where data sovereignty comes into play, where they have identified this as PII information, they would still fall back to cloud, as we call it, cloud at customer model, and then use it. Now, unstructured data these days, we see a lot of the customers use our Oracle database as an extension to keep unstructured data. For example, over the last year and a half, we support unstructured information that can be kept inside the Oracle database as well. So we are seeing a lot of these cloud companies or digibanks who are cloud native imbibe on the newer technologies that we provide. Apart from that, the unstructured data are protected using constructs around object store, which are getting really popular these days in the cloud world, right? And on top of that are as we call as security bolted on to some of these cloud products that we have. Right? Products like Data Safe, where it actually goes back, looks at your data and say, is some of this information PII? Have you encrypted, as Mr. Dipu mentioned about encryption, at rest encryption in motion and stuff like that. So a lot of the security constructs are now built on top of these unstructured data and structured data as well.
Outside the application, do you mean?
Yes. So your application stores the data, right? So your data store has native capabilities around vaulting the data in the database, right? And on top of that, there are checks and balances in place, which can actually look at these data sets and say, well, are these some of these data sets PII? Are these data sets critical enough to be encrypted, and so on and so forth? Right?
That's interesting. Thank you, Tarun. Good insights. Let me come to Navneetan and Khurshid. And yours are both kind of opposite organizations. One is an old organization, Jammu Kashmir Bank. Grow is a very new organization. So when it comes to an old organization, Khurshid, you would have a lot of legacy data, right? Some of it would be PII data and valuable data, and would have, even though it is legacy, would have a lot of security concerns. How do you manage that in terms of security and cloud and structured and unstructured, and provide the liquid from the liquidity perspective? And then I would ask Navneetan to comment that with just all the recent data and all the structured data, what is your view towards leveraging cloud? So first, Khurshid.
Over a period of time, all banks in the country have moved to digital platforms. Now, the legacy data, which was available in our ledgers and books, is already moved to a digital platform. I personally feel no bank in the country would be holding on to legacy data now. Everybody has come on nearly the same level. The account information is digitized, the PII information is digitized, your digital transactions, everything. It's literally the same level as far as digitalization is concerned. Okay, all the banks. So the level of security, the level of protection, and level of liquidity that is there available in the banking sector as far as data is concerned is nearly the same.
Maybe from my standpoint, just I'll put it on the way overall holistic view, like in terms of organizations, what they handle. Like just I split into three areas. One is maybe it's the internal employees, and second one is maybe cloud service provider, and third one is in terms of the third party who is helping for the cloud service provider as well as for the organization. So just I'm taking this three folks into the this overall the cloud migrations. If you go back a little bit, the last year, irrespective of the organizations, of course, the bank have a resistance in terms of the moving towards the cloud in terms of data security and all the things. As this Oracle person has mentioned, it's absolutely the volume of data is huge, and then the people are forced to take into the the cloud environment because the elasticity is increased, right? We are not sure when the load is going to take over there. If you go back just 10 years back, where we have IRCTC, the website, ticket booking and all the things. Very simple logic. Like there will be a opening tickets on maybe 90 days before, 30 days before, and then there is a peak hours, morning maybe 9 to 10 you can book it. If you see this earlier systems where you will have all the time where we have a high level of infrastructure, the data centers. Like for the 1 hour peak load, what are the resources required? Just we were having for the entire 24/7, which may not absolutely not required, right? But that's the way the cloud playing very significant role. Now that the things are absolutely changed, right? If you want to have a resource only for the 9 to 10, I can scale up only on the 9 to 10 for this, it's a RAM or utilizations or the CPU, whatever you want. The rest of the times, of course, I'm scaling down. So that's the way it's like, traffic awareness, aware, ramping up where we can, scaling them. Like it's may not require the manual intervention also. If the number of it is more, by default, the system will take over the, the number of resource what it is required. So that's the way just I'm looking in terms of the very, the drastic change when compared to the existing legacy environment and the new, because we have seen a lot of value additions for the business as well as for the the customer.
Let me come to Prashant and ask, since you handle a customer segment that is very mobile, that may not be very tech savvy, that may not be very literate also, do you see any technical obstructions to improving data liquidity in terms of obsolete devices, obsolete operating systems, older applications, things like that, things in Gujarati, Marathi, Bengali, some vernacular languages, all those kind of things, to what kind of extent are they an obstruction to data liquidity? And do you need technology, or do you need innovation, or do you need process? How do you actually enhance liquidity in the current scenario where actually there are all kinds of obstacles?
Yeah, you rightly said, the major obstacle as of today for us is the language. Okay. Because these truck drivers, they need everything in their language specifically. So any new development, like a lot of things are coming, a lot of fintechs are coming with a lot of new solutions, and there is a rush to implement those solutions. But every time, whenever we want to implement those solutions, the first thing, we'll have to put ourselves as a truck driver and then see whether that makes any value addition for my truck driver or not.
Okay.
Just to give a best example is video KYC. Okay. Everybody is rushing to video KYC. Okay. And if you see the earlier process of the KYC and the video KYC process, where you have to download the Aadhaar from UIDAI site, upload that XML file to the portal, and then do the video KYC, all those things, we find it very difficult. The truck driver find it very difficult. Okay. And then your person talking to him, asking him to show the PAN card, Aadhaar card, wave his hand, multiple questions, everything. So we always, that becomes obstacle for us to implement any new or a kind of a flashy technology to, roll it out immediately. And that's what we do in the technology is that most of our solution, if you see, all the loans or whatever services we are providing are OTP based solution. Okay. So even any services he want, okay, he just has to give his mobile number to the service provider, either on the toll or on the tire station or the fuel station. Just take the mobile number. The mobile number will hit our server. We'll validate the credential of that customer, and we share the OTP. And that OTP is shared, his transaction is done.
Okay.
We, and other thing is that these guys are always on the move. Okay. So we always say, don't talk or don't use your mobile while driving. and we want our customer to be continuously on drive. Okay, so we are looking at the solutions, very easy solutions, where by keeping a mobile, he can speak to that mobile and do his transaction, or just by putting the OTP or just clicking OK, yes, no, he should be in a position to do the transaction. So the devices, yes, as you rightly said,
Are some of them still using feature phones?
yes.
Okay.
And see, because we are in used vehicle finance, the story is different for the new vehicle finance business. We are in a finance where we even finance 6-year-old trucks, 7-year-old trucks, where our objective is to chalak se malak. So the
Okay.
cleaner become aspiration to become a truck driver, then as a owner. So still we have those phones because they use that phone because of the effectiveness of the battery. Because their objective is that the mobile chalna chahiye mera continuously wherever I go. Okay, and then they go for that featured phone where battery life is very good. All those things. So what we have done, most of our solutions are OTP based, and we still see language as a major barrier. Where we have taken a lot of initiative to convert all our mobile application in multi-language. But then when you say a language, even you take a simple language, if you say Kannada or Marathi or Tamil or Telugu, within a state, that language itself is spoken in different way. Okay, to bring to that level, and to bring that user experience and user comfort is a major challenge, basically. And we do have other business also where we have a.
Thank you, Prashant. So basically, to summarize in one line, it's at the data liquidity is more at the customer end rather than within the organization. Within the organization, you have systems and processes and infrastructure for smooth movement of data. Coming to language, I remember, I think, Deepu, your organization, Bajaj Allianz, has on their mobile app, you've done something in multiple language. Did it work out effectively? Did it improve liquidity at the edges of the organization?
Well, yes, Manoj, because what we did was, during COVID-19, when everybody, had to get into a digital way of interacting with us. And obviously we have India and then we have Bharat, right? And we have customers across all cities. We said, it can't be just English, which is the default language of choice. So one is we came out with a mobile app exclusively in Indian languages for our farmers who take crop insurance. And then apart from that, when customers were very wary of going to hospitals for COVID-19 testing, we came out with an AI-enabled self-assessment bot for customers, whereby they could get themselves tested without having to go to hospitals. And we offered that in 10 languages. So obviously, the offtake was, very high, and it really contributed, to our success in terms of having the lowest grievances and the highest NPS in the marketplace.
Did the language interface run smoothly, or it still had, like Prashant said, they speak different accents and dialects, and the literacy issues?
No, it worked smoothly for us. We didn't have any such issues because we had done it based on research, and it worked out smoothly for us. So, for example, crop insurance, we offered it in top 3 languages, where we had our customers. And similarly for the COVID-19 AI-enabled self-assessment bot, we again picked the top 10 languages. So it works smoothly for us.
Okay. If I may ask, Khurshid, within your bank, where do you see most of the opportunities to improve data liquidity? In the core systems, in the customer-facing systems, in some risk systems, or in some security systems?
In banking industry and in our bank, the biggest area where data liquidity has to be increased is with respect to transactions with respect to government and social security schemes. Now, if in the country we are able to implement data liquidity along with exchange data with governments, amazing benefits will happen across the sectors for social security schemes. What is happening, for example, I'll give you the simple example of what happened in this place, Tamil Nadu. You would have heard of PM Kisan versus KCC accounts. Now, these are silos. Government has a silo database. Banks have a huge authenticated databases. If data liquidity happens between these two databases, amazing benefits for millions of citizens follow. And that's one area which I find it extremely interesting and extremely important for all of us to, think about and do work on.
Interesting. That sounds like a huge potential. Let me ask Tarun if there is a technology solution. Here's one big setup banks, here's another big setup government. And how do you improve liquidity between them? Is it a technology thing or a regulatory thing or something else?
Right, Manoj. I think it's a combination of technology and regulatory requirements, right? And we have seen this transformation happen at other countries as well, right? So people have started to create API exchanges, right? And you can actually during the Singapore FinTech Festival last month in December, there was a big discussions around API exchange, not only within countries but cross-border as well. Okay. And the idea behind that was to address some of the anti-money laundering requirements that some of these countries have come up with, right? So the potential is huge, right? I mean, it's certainly about the FSI sector and the government coming together. Not only that, we can now think of cross-border trade data being shared across in supporting in preventing AML and anti-money laundering, and in supporting cross-border trades as well.
Mr. Reddy, what is your bank's experience talking about what Mr. Khurshid mentioned, the integration between banks and the government? Yours being a large bank, that must be a bigger opportunity and maybe a bigger challenge. I don't know. What have you seen in this case? Is liquidity a constraint for delivering those services? Data liquidity, keeping data privacy in mind, because I think data privacy is something that regulators everywhere in the world are becoming very strict and imposing huge penalties when these are breached. Any thoughts? Maybe one from insurance, one from bank.
Yeah, can I take it?
Yes, Mr. Reddy.
Yeah, as you rightly said, now initially the EU GDPR that has come, that data privacy, and it is too stringent. Everyone knows. And recently, the Dubai also, they have come out with some kind of data privacy. And Hong Kong is already there. They are having the data. Australia, they are having their own data privacy policy. Since we are a bank, and our is any corner of the country or any corner of the world, the customer can do the transaction. So we have a customer database of all NRE customers, as well as the customers who are residing at various countries, and we have to abide by the data privacy guidelines and their regulations, and as well as the local guidelines also. Though we don't have the privacy policy, which has not come, but it is highly sensible that we should be able to identify the data which is pertaining to other regulatory, like other countries' guidelines, and we have to ensure that on regular basis we have to do a data impact analysis on the data and ensure that the data is well protected. It is always, there are guidelines says that once customer asks that the customer give a consent to forget the data, and we should ensure that not only the core system is impacted, the entire downstream technologies, wherever the data is being collected, processed, or exchanged, or stored, or transmitted, whatever the language we can put a word, everywhere the data has to be forgotten. So such a stringent regulations which are there, and it adds a lot of cost to the bank, in terms of managing multiple assets. So my suggestions, what I experienced is that now it is a very high time we should able to recognize, identify the data asset, whatever we have classified at one point. And if you have identified at one point and classified properly, that classification should undergo the downstream technologies such as your backup, your recovery, your archival, write management, or your data leakage or data loss prevention. everywhere that downstreaming, the data flow, the data liquidity which will happen to the downstream technologies, the classification what you have done at the entry point should take care, so that it will reduce lot of cost, and it will reduce also at the same time it will reduce your operations. It will improve your operation, smoothness in the operation, as well as it will reduce the cost of your. You can optimize your cost of investment. You need not to invest the same thing in multiple solutions, because the solutions are different. It comes all together. So, as a part of the data governance, you should have that mechanism. Once it is classified and tagged, any data, that should be flown. That should be flown entire your ecosystem. Then only it will add the value. So you can also protect your all data regulatory guidelines and everything, and it will remain. The business will also remain safe. So that is my message to you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Reddy. I think
Yeah.
that is a very good perspective. Friends, we have to kind of close now soon, as Babu has mentioned. May I request then the last question we can have is, extending what Mr. Reddy has said, how can we bring, along with liquidity, which is going to continue increasing, how do we bring better protection and privacy, and how do we keep the costs low? So obviously, we cannot keep putting infinite amount of money to achieve all this. Okay, everyone can give their last closing comments on increasing liquidity, keeping costs low, and security, privacy and security, maintaining that. One and a half minute remark from each of you.
Yeah.
Just in terms of
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. See, moreover, just in line with the thought what Reddy had shared it actually. This is it's based on the two-way, right? One is user convenience and then user comfort. So user, if you want to have a simple thing, so maybe the earlier bank and now the bank it's absolutely different, right? If you want to withdraw 10,000 rupees from account, or maybe if you want to send the money 10,000 rupees to some other account where we have to go to bank or second level, we reach the online. Now it is just one click on the UPI, right? Just you add the click on the users and then just make the payment. This chapter will close. Like sitting chair from one chair to other chair, just few seconds we can finish up the multiple transaction. So that's a level of convenience we have reached it, right? That's what it is a fundamental from the earlier traditional way to the current trends what it's moving. So one way is user convenience. So without data, is it possible? Definitely, it's not possible, right? To make this comfort, to make this things to move ahead actually, because all the UPI users will have absolutely your mobile number, name, and then of course it's linked with your bank account, which other bank you wanted to connect. So that's why I see.
Can you focus more on the privacy and cost perspective as a closing remark?
Yeah, this is moreover I can see the user concerns. Like what are the user concerns? What we are getting? This data is being used for this purpose. Whether it is interacted only for that purpose or not. So for that, of course, data privacy bill is we are waiting over there actually. Of course, there is going for a lot of amendment, but of course that may bring a lot of stringent controls on the in terms of the data protection and then data consent from the the respective users.
Okay, thank you. Prashant, can you give your closing remarks?
Yeah. So as you rightly said, the data privacy is going to play a major role. One side, data liquidity, we say we need to collect a lot of data. One side, we need to protect the data. So I think four simple things, as a as a process we need to do is that, first thing is the categorization of the data, whatever we collect. We need to be very clear on that. There are classification tools are available, identification tools are available. Then how we are going to use that data, we need to be very clear. Okay. Second thing is how we are going to collect that data. Okay. And the fourth and the last thing is how we are going to disclose that data. Okay. So if like for each these four questions, if we put proper security controls, proper tools and proper mechanisms, and if it has been made available on need to do and need to know basis, I think we'll be well with privacy. Should not be any major challenge.
Thank you, Prashant. Very clear cut and very straightforward explanation. Thank you so much.
About
Khurshid,
About the privacy, it was something which was so close to my heart, and I did a lot of work on it. See, banks in particular know a lot about all of us. Now, banks have huge staffing also. Now, for example, let me talk of my bank. See, I have around 15,000 employees, 14,000 employees.
Okay.
Any bank, lot of employees. Now, these employees, whosoever, where's the weakest link in the chain? It is human beings only. And in our social setup, it becomes extremely easy to get anybody's data. Banks know who I am, how much do I have, what is my current status of finances, how much balance do I have. These are things which nobody would want to share. So what we did within I ran a project where we actually started logging in what the eyes see. If tomorrow, if I get a customer complaint, my balance or my statement was available with somebody told me about my balance in the bank. So I had a recourse where I would know who saw that data.
Okay.
So that is very important as far as banks are concerned. The very critical information, the privacy information, we need to have a logging of what the eyes see. And eyes, when I say, is even within the banking system, the staff, what staff sees. And in India, the way we are built, our social setups, we can have under Dosti program, we can do a social engineering project and get anybody's balance, get anybody's, so that's something very important. And the key is banks. Yeah, banks have to have strict privacy guidelines, not only guidelines, mechanisms to check.
You very rightly pointed out the weakest link in the chain, and the work from home makes it even weaker.
Oh, yeah.
Makes sense. Or
So
work from anywhere, not even home, work from anywhere.
Yeah, we have to log what our eyes see. So that I can tomorrow say, okay, fine. If I'm seeing it, I need not show it to anybody. I can't say I didn't see.
You're right. You're right. Thank you for pointing that out. Deepu, your closing remarks on privacy and cost. Cost also, please.
Yeah. So Manoj, there are two things. I think from a cost perspective, it goes without saying that, you need to do a fine balancing act. You need to get the right value. So you have to spend money. At the same time, you can't splurge. So therefore, there are 2-3 things. I think one is from a tools perspective. Now, from a tools perspective, you can put in those standard measures. You can put in dual authentication. You can put in VPN, and then of course, you have access controls. And coming to the other aspect, because normally when we talk of data, we talk of tools, but I think the other aspect is the human being. If you look at most, cases where, there have been some breaches, it's about human beings having made, some silly mistake. So I think it's extremely important to, keep sensitizing people, especially now, when there's a work from home scenario and people are working in a scattered, environment. So I'd basically, focus on these 3 areas. And the other area to look at cost is also see how you can, mine your data better, because once you invest in it, then it's about, leveraging all your data, internal and external, and to keep mining that.
Correct. You go back to a very old technology that mankind invented thousands of years ago, mining for metals and whatever else. You go back to data mining now. Very interesting. So that leaves Tarun, your thoughts on privacy, how technology is evolving to meet future needs, how banks or financial organizations can keep it under control cost-wise.
Right. I think the Khurshid and Deepu mentioned both about the tools and the technology part of the human element to it, right? And we see increasing adoption of these tools, right? Tools around segregation of duties, right? Who can see the data, who cannot see the data. We also see tools like database activity monitoring being placed, right? Who is seeing the data at that point in time? Does he have access path? Right? And these are interesting times because work from home leads to people to log into sensitive systems middle of a night, and they can say that I'm working from home, right? So I have the flexibility to do that. So there has to be proper controls in place to say, I do not want somebody who has access to the system to log in and check on the bank balance of some relatives who visited the day before, right? That's not warranted for, right? So there are tools and technologies in place. at Oracle, we take pride in saying that security is in the heart, is bolted on into our platforms, technologies, application, infrastructure. Right? But more interesting point is around people behavior, right? And I think the behavioral science around training around the security awareness is something we have started to see, where there is a concerted effort to let people know how to utilize and handle data effectively, right? And what are ways and means where data can be breached, right? I mean, Mr. Reddy pointed an interesting fact about GDPR. Now, where one of the GDPR elements is around recoverability of data, right? So if somebody says, I opt out of data, do I have to go back to the backups that were taken for last 10 years and remove the data? It's a mammoth task to do it.
That's right.
Is that an area where technology is being developed?
Yes, there are, but again, as I said, it's not only technology. It has to be a mixture of technology and process improvements in place to handle such requests.
Thank you all very much, and wish you all a great year ahead, 2021. May it erase all the problems you faced in 2020 and make your life fulfilling and happy. Thank you so much.